Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullroot.
Hey, Skull King Nation. Welcome back to another Skull King Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullroot, and I'm your host today. And we continue with our inside analysis interviews. And in this next interview, we talk with Mr. Joe Zagacki. He is the voice of the Miami Hurricanes, and we go over a couple of players. Number one, we go over the highly touted tight end, Mr. David Njoku, who has had a stellar season this year. And after that, we talk a little bit about Brad Kaaya, who's one of the lesser talked about quarterbacks in this year's draft. And just kind of over both these players, the year that they had, and some of their intangibles. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mr. Joe Zagacki, the voice of the Miami Hurricanes. Welcome back to another Inside Analysis interview, Skull King Football. Today I have the honor of talking to Mr. Joe Zagacki, the radio voice of the Miami Hurricanes. Thank you for coming on the show today, Joe.
Well, thank you for having me, Ryan. Looking forward to it.
All right, so the two people that we wanted to cover today from Miami's football team is we're going to start off with the highly touted David Njoku, the tight end, 6'4", 246 pounds. And if you could just maybe give us a little bit of a review of the kind of the year that he has had this past year.
Yeah, he had a tremendous season. He got better as the year went on. He's just so strong and physical, and last year caught just about everything thrown his way. But at the end of the season, he was able to take short passes and turn them into long touchdown runs. Had a 74-yard touchdown run, I believe it was against Duke at the end of the year, just on a bubble screen, and he's able to fight tacklers off. Had a tremendous touchdown against Pittsburgh where he ran it in from 20, 25 yards out. At the goal line, went airborne, leaping over defenders for a spectacular play. So his combination of speed and athleticism makes him such a dangerous and acrobatic player, and I got it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, he's his you talk about his athleticism. That, I mean, when watching just some of his highlight film on YouTube is, seeing a guy 6'4", 246 pounds leaping over people and doing flips in order to get into the end zone is very impressive.
He was a tremendous high jumper in high school, and actually was part of the University of Miami track team when he first started. But because he had to put on weight in order to play tight end, that kind of ended his track days. That being said, if he needed to perform in track and field, he'd be a gold medal winner. But I do think at the next level, the NFL level, because of his speed, because he is so strong, because he can outrun defenders, he can wrestle the ball away from them, he's just going to be at the pro level what he was at the college level, and that was a matchup nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, you go to his combine stats, and he was one of the top performers in the vertical jump, the broad jump, the 3-cone drill, and I think that those specific things definitely show the explosiveness that he has. And you talk about his track background, how that'll really help. And, it really jumped off to me his speed for his size. It's not often that you see a tight end with breakaway speed that can pull away from defensive backs once he gets the ball in his hands.
Well, he averaged 16 yards a catch. You can throw him the ball short, and as you mentioned, he can run away from defenders. He can run away from linebackers. Linebackers at the college level could not cover him. Safeties had a tough time covering him. You would have to vice him inside and out. Really, the only one that stopped him, I would say, over the last 8 games of his college career was David Njoku. A couple of lapses in concentration where he dropped some easy passes. Probably his eyes getting too big looking at the green in front of him and forgetting to hold on to the ball, running with the ball without having the ball. That would be, I think, probably the only knock I would have on David. But as the season went on, I think he did a much better job of looking the ball in, securing the ball, and then turning upfield. And he was just such a threat, whether it was a vertical pass play for Brad Kaaya or coming back underneath the coverage and just catching the ball underneath, or perhaps getting in motion and getting some easy access into the secondary, and then taking an easy throw from Kaaya and turning a 5-yard catch into a 50-plus yard run.
Yeah, he seems to, you talked about his concentration a little bit. He, for the most part, when, on what I've seen, he seems to be a pretty adept at using his hands to catch the ball, and for the most part doesn't let the ball really get into him too much. He really tries to keep his hands out in front of him when he's catching the ball.
I think some guys, in terms of catching the ball and being receivers, they're just natural ball catchers. Some guys fight it. I think David might have been a little bit in between, and I almost feel like sometimes catching a pass is a lot like having a really good arm. It's kind of a gift. But I do think David got better in his career at the University of Miami because he worked really hard on it. And I just think he also became more confident catching the ball. So I don't think that's going to be an issue at the next level. The team that drafts him, if I was them in training camp, I'd make it easy on him at the beginning to keep him healthy. Number one, get him the ball and let him see the ball in his hands a couple of times so he gains his confidence. As I mentioned, at the end of the season, his confidence was so high that he was practically unstoppable. I mean, 2 catches for 134 yards in the final game against Duke, and in the bowl game against West Virginia, he runs in for a touchdown. He drags tacklers with him along the sideline on a spectacular touchdown run. It was 23 yards, and I think 21 of the 23 yards, he took 3 or 4 players with him.
Yeah, he, when in terms of, having defenders on him, I love the fact that he looks for contact when he gets near the sideline. He doesn't look to step out. He looks to, drop the shoulder and try to carry a couple of guys to get a few extra yards. It shows that grit and tenacity.
He is. He's got plenty. He's plenty tough enough to make catches in traffic. He knows that he's big enough to run over people. Now, I don't know that early in his career he understood that, but he's big enough to run over people. He's big enough to be an able and willing blocker. You can use him in a variety of ways. He can be stand-up tight end. You can put his hand in the ground. You can flex him out. You can put him in the backfield. There almost isn't anything that he can't do. Now, maybe at the next level, he might be limited somewhere, but at the college level, he wasn't. When he first came to the University of Miami, they weren't exactly sure what to do with him. They had him playing outside linebacker and defensive end for a couple of days in practice before making him a full-time tight end. But he's got a little bit of Calvin Johnson in him. Some would say maybe he's not big enough to be a tight end and too big to be a wide receiver, but I just think he's so skilled and has such a great attitude that he's going to be very successful. You won't find too many more kids that play football with the type of joy that David Njoku has.
All right, one more quick thing. You mentioned his blocking real quick. Being a tight end, a lot of guys are called on to be that extra blocker on the line. Just give just a little overview of his blocking ability. Going into the NFL.
Well, I would look at it this way. The University of Miami's offensive line last year was their weak link. It was the reason Brad Kaaya was uncomfortable at the beginning of the year. The adjustment that Mark Richt made was more maximum protection, more 2 tight end formations. Miami was probably in double tight end, I would say 85% of the time in the second half of the season, meaning David Njoku and Chris Herndon with a lot of that pass protection responsibility or in their run game on Njoku and Herndon. So he wasn't afraid to get in there, to be on the end of the B with his hand on the ground, lined up next to a tackle, taking on defensive ends. He's big enough and strong enough to do it. And like I said, I think he's going to be able and willing to do it in the NFL.
Alrighty. Again, we're talking with Joe Zagacki, the radio voice of the Miami Hurricanes, and let's go ahead and move on from David Njoku. And you mentioned him. A couple times. Let's get into a little bit. Brad Kaaya, the quarterback out of Miami, 6'4", 214 pounds. Not necessarily have the notoriety that some of these quarterbacks have had coming into the draft, like a Deshaun Watson, a Deshaun Kaiser, those guys. Give us a little bit of a background on Kaaya and kind of the year, and maybe even his career so far this year.
Well, I think Brad Kaaya is going to be a very good quarterback at the next level. He had a tremendous career at the University of Miami. He goes down as one of the all-time greatest quarterbacks at the University of Miami. He owns about every single record in terms of passing yards, completions, attempts, touchdowns. He's there with all the great quarterbacks at the University of Miami, whether it's Vinny Testaverde or Gino Toretta or Steve Walsh or Bernie Kosar. Kaaya's name is going to be 1, 2, or 3 in every single record, and he did it in 3 years. I thought last year got off to a little bit of a slow start. I think some of that was because of the offensive line and the pressure that he was receiving. But ultimately, what I think went under the radar, at the end of the season, he was 22nd in the NCAA in passing yards in an offense that was a pro-style offense. It wasn't as if he was playing in a Texas Tech or Oklahoma or Baylor system where it was spread the field and throw the ball 50 times a game. He ended up with nearly 10,000 passing yards for the University of Miami in his career. But his season last year, as it went on, got better and better. Ended up with only 7 interceptions for the year, over 3,000 yards, threw for 270 yards a game. I thought he was really good. And the thing that I like about Kaaya is he hits the target, and he creates. I think this is important. I think he did this as well as anybody in college football, and will do it at the next level, is he gives a team points on the scoreboard out of the pocket. No question that he is able to deliver touchdowns throwing the ball from the pocket.
Yeah, looking at again, watching some of his game tape, he really has a good sense inside the pocket, as far as I could tell. A quick release. He's not flat-footed in the pocket. He's able to shuffle his feet around to give his receivers some time. He also looks like, from what I saw, it looks like he has a bit of an ability to throw the ball on the run when needed. I know, again, for me, being from Seattle, having watched Russell Wilson do it for the last 4 or 5 years, his ability to throw on the run, and just the value in that. He really seems to be, again, for the most part, a pretty complete quarterback. Again, just not necessarily with the notoriety that a lot of the other guys have had this year.
I think he is your standard pro-style quarterback, pocket quarterback. He can throw the ball on the run. That's not his forte. He's not going to be out there running a lot of naked bootlegs. He's not going to be. Yeah. I think he probably can escape the rush a little better than what he showed early in the season. But eventually, I mean, you look at his numbers at the end of last season, and again, I don't think he got enough credit for it. He threw 27 touchdown passes against 7 interceptions. I think he had 1 interception over the final 6 games of the season. He put up some pretty spectacular numbers. I think a lot of people just focused on what he did early in the year. Didn't play particularly great this year against Florida State, but his previous 2 games against Florida State were as good as any quarterback in the history of Miami, and probably as good as any quarterback ever against Florida State. Some would say, well, he didn't have that great signature win at the University of Miami, meaning he didn't beat Florida State. Well, the defense didn't stop Dalvin Cook either, so he put Miami in position. He put Miami in position to beat Florida State twice. This year, he threw a touchdown pass. All they had to do was kick the extra point. They missed the extra point. He can't kick the extra point. That wasn't on Brad Kaaya. The year before that, he threw for over 400 yards against Florida State, including a spectacular touchdown to Stacy Coley, which gave them the lead in Tallahassee with 4 minutes to go in the game. He can't go out there and tackle Dalvin Cook. So I thought some of that criticism was a little bit unfair to Kaaya. He's smart. NFL people are going to love his intelligence. They're going to love how he picks up the game, how he understands the game on the chalkboard, and then takes it out onto the field.
One more thing, just being a quarterback and just the leadership that comes along with that. If you could maybe just give a little bit on some of his leadership abilities, not only on the field, but his leadership kind of in the clubhouse and off the field.
I think that's a very good question. Sometimes that comes down to beauty is in the eye of the beholder. He is not a rah-rah guy. He's not going to jump up and down. I don't think he's going to jump up and down. I don't think we saw a lot of that emotion from him. I think he prefers to be more methodical. I think he prefers to be a leader, let's say, I guess a leader by example every single day in what he does. He's going to do his job the same way every day. He's going to be on time. He's going to be in the meeting room. He's going to try to be number one in wind sprints. He's going to try to win every drill. He's going to try to complete every single pass. But his body language, I think, is going to be the same every single day. You're not going to see him up clapping his hands one day. Conversely, you're not going to see him drop his head the next day. He's just going to be very consistent in his behavior. I think that's how he's going to lead.
I think that's really an underrated characteristic, the ability to no matter whether you're leading, getting, just absolutely killing the other team or really, really struggling, that ability to keep your sense of mind and keep going, with the same mentality of keep pushing, keep working hard, no matter what situation you find yourself in. I really think that is an underrated characteristic especially in athletes today.
Well, I think sometimes people see what they want to see. And in Brad Kaaya's case, it's like I think sometimes coaches are judged on their sideline demeanor. Are they yelling at their players? Are they jumping up and down? Are they John Gruden? That sometimes is construed as, great leadership on the sidelines. Brad Kaaya, I could probably find 15 touchdown passes that were deep throws where he's running down the field, pumping his fist, pointing a finger at his wide receiver, celebrating and joyful with his players. I can also point out many times where he's throwing a touchdown pass and maybe clapped his hands a little bit and run off the field. But I think day to day, the way he interacts with his players is the same. He's going to be consistent. I think that's the best message you can send to your teammates as a quarterback.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, we've been talking with Joe Zagacki, the radio voice of the Miami Hurricanes. And Joe, I really want to thank you again for giving us a little bit of your time to come onto our show to talk about David Njoku and Brad Kaaya. We really appreciate the fact that you've been willing to do this for us.
No problem, Ryan. Thank you.
All right. Well, hopefully, next year, if you got a few more guys coming out, we can do this again.
All right. Whatever you need, anytime.
All right. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, Skull King Nation. Thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.